皆さんこんにちは。山田厚史のここが聞きたい。今日はアメリカから2人の元軍人の方に来ていただいております。紹介します。ベトナム戦争に参加されたマイク・ヘイスティンさんです。そしてこちらがイラク戦争に従軍されたネイサン・ルイスさんです。どうですか。まず、ヘイスティンさんからちょっと自己紹介お願いします。
My name is Mike Hasty, and I was an Army medic in Vietnam. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and what I experienced in Vietnam totally and completely changed my life.
My name is Nathan Lewis. I'm from New York State. I was in the U.S. Army and was in the invasion of Iraq in 2003.
お二人はベテランズ・フォー・ピースというアメリカの退役軍人による平和団体のメンバーです。いろいろアメリカでも、ベトナム戦争、イラク戦争、いろんな問題があるので、そういう戦争のために盛り上がってきた団体です。日本が憲法を改正して、いよいよ、アメリカのコントロール下に入っていくんじゃないかという、そういうふうな危機感も抱いて、このほど日本に来ていただきました。そして各地で平和団体などと一緒に活動し、そして戦争の悲惨さ、無意味さ、そうしたものを伝えてきてこられています。今日は我々デモクラシータイムズの視聴者のためにスタジオに来ていただいて、戦争について熱く語っていただくことになりました。それではまずマイクさん、ベトナムに従軍された衛生兵として悲惨な戦争を見ておられたということですが、あなたの見たベトナム戦争を具体的に視聴者に語りかけていただけないでしょうか。どんなことがベトナムで起きてたんですか。
I got to Vietnam in 1970, in September of 1970, and I left in September of 1971. I was the head medic in my unit, and what I was seeing for the most part was I was seeing the rapid disintegration of American involvement in Vietnam. Everything was falling apart militarily in Vietnam. So I was seeing the homicides, the suicides, the rampant heroin addiction. I was seeing shootouts. I was seeing racial violence. I was seeing, accidents. And even though we would get hit every once in a while, maybe with a rocket or a mortar or a sapper attack, like a sniper round went over my head one time.
ということは、戦争の末期になって、軍の規律の乱れ、そしてその一種のアメリカ軍が自己崩壊する、そういうふうな局面で、あなたはベトナム戦争におられたわけですね。
What I was seeing was that happened in my unit is that I was seeing everything that was dismantling my core belief system, because you have to remember I was raised in a military family. I was raised under a lot of discipline. My father was a career military officer, so I was raised in that environment. That was my culture. So when I got to Vietnam and realized what the United States was doing, it totally dismantled my core belief system, because we were not there to bring freedom to the Vietnamese. We were not there to bring democracy to the Vietnamese. We were there because war is about corporate profiteering.
ベトナム戦争っていうのはまさにアメリカはですね、アメリカの民主主義とか、このベトナムで、遅れたベトナムの政治体制とかそういうものを破壊して、それで新しいなんていうかアメリカのようないい国を作るというそういう大義でもって行われたけれども、そうではなかったということです。
Yes, it was completely different. We had no direction as far as bringing any kind of peace and democracy to Vietnam. I mean, we installed Diem as our puppet president in South Vietnam. he was brutal, and he was nothing but a puppet for American imperialism.
わかりました。そうしたいろいろ問題は、アメリカ帝国主義の、要するにかなり、悪い行動がベトナムであったということですけれども、あなたが実際にご覧になった戦場の光景、そして戦場で経験したさまざまな悲惨な場面というのを、視聴者に伝えていただきたいんですが、どのようなことが現場で起きてたんでしょうか。
Well, the primary thing that my unit had is that we had 3 fire bases in my unit that had heavy artillery on it. We had M48 tanks. We had armored personnel carriers. We had 175 millimeter howitzers. And on my unit, I was on a reconnaissance support base.
というのはそういうふうな部隊が何をしてたわけですか。どういうその軍事的なアクティビティをしてたんでしょうか。
Well, we would get some wounded in from the field where they were either dead or wounded, and our job was to treat them when they first arrived at our aid station. If they were critically wounded, all we did was patch them. We put bandages on them. We started IVs on them, and in most cases, we sent them down to Quinyan at an evacuation hospital.
前線から運ばれてきた兵隊をそうすると治療するのがお仕事だったわけですね。
Yes, yeah. I was a bit back from the front lines. Like I say, we were receiving some wounded, and then we would work rapidly to get those people out of there as soon as possible. And so that's the kind of stuff that I was seeing, and then also there was just so much internal violence that were going on around us during the process of us trying to save soldiers and get them sent out to other evacuation centers.
そういうふうな傷ついた兵隊というのはベトナムの、ベトコンと要するに白衛戦を演ずるというそういうことなんでしょうか。どうやってそういうふうに怪我をするんですか。
The American soldiers would certainly be involved in some kind of activity in the jungle. I can remember one day a soldier was brought in. He had been shot in the head. One of our medics was in his unit. They were sent out in the field to protect a long-range patrol. And during that operation, they were ambushed, and this particular soldier was shot in the head and killed. And then the medic that was with him was standing right next to him when his friend got killed. And then, I was seeing other things. I remember a time flying out on a helicopter, and an American soldier had gotten his arm all mangled, and so they flew me out there, picked him up, brought him back into the aid station, and we treated him and sent him to the 67th Evac Hospital in Quinyan. And so, on one occasion, there was one of the long-range patrols was ambushed in the field. And there was 5 of them that were injured. They were brought in and they were treated at our aid station. And the only person that wasn't severely injured was the medic that was out in the field with them.
動くものはすべて撃てというふうな本があったと思うんですが、そういうふうな緊張状態に強いられている兵隊はかなりメンタルにも厳しくなるだろう、おかしくなるだろうし、その上官とその下士官の関係というのもかなり劣悪だというふうに聞くんですが、そういうふうな組織の乱れとか、内部崩壊というものがまた戦争をさらに悲惨なものにしているというようなことは体験されましたか。
Of course. On one occasion, an American soldier went up to his commanding officer and he murdered him with his M16. On another occasion, I went into a tent and an American soldier had taken an M16 and blew his brains out. On another occasion, I unzipped a body bag, and an American soldier had put a pistol to his head. You know, on another occasion, two soldiers got into a firefight. One of the soldiers shot the other soldier in the stomach. We took him over to the aid station. We tried to save his life, but he died in the aid station. So, you know, I was seeing, and I can remember another occasion where a racial situation where two American soldiers got into a fight. Black soldier had the white soldier down on the ground, and he had a knife to his throat, and he was going to kill him. And so we talked him out of doing that. You know, I had another medic friend of mine that was a good friend of mine, and he got a Dear John letter from his girlfriend, and he attempted suicide in Vietnam. You know, and so you know, these are the kind of things that you see when American soldiers are under tremendous stress. And so that's what we were seeing, because there was a helicopter in my unit. On the front of the helicopter, it had the word "Y" written on the front. It had the word "Y" written.
Oh, yeah. Why?
Yes, on the front of the helicopter, and you know, so by 1970-71, this was an anti-war statement. So you know, it was basically saying why are we still in Vietnam, and why were we ever in Vietnam? So I was seeing a lot of you know, black soldiers were often demonstrating. The BBU was well known in Vietnam, which was the Black Brothers United, because they knew the war was a racist war. And so, you know, when we talked about killing the gooks in Vietnam, and we used racial terms, well, that became very sensitive to black soldiers, who were often referred to as niggers in their own country.
そういうふうな人種差別とか、それこそ貧富の差とか、そういうふうな社会が抱えている怒りみたいなものが、こういう戦争とかそのストレスの中で一気に吹き出して内部崩壊していくということが現実にベトナムでは起きたんでしょうか。
That's a good expression, an explosion of those social issues. You really said something very, very strong there, and I appreciate your comment. I will remember that comment, because that's what we were seeing.
ここにホワイトありますけども、そういうふうな形の、もう軍隊自身がおかしくなってしまっている。そうするとその一番の大きな問題は、この戦争は何のためにということを兵隊たちが懐疑的になっている。戦争の目的に信用できなくなっているということで、いろんな問題が吹き出ているということでしょうか。
Yes. There was no esprit de corps in my unit. You know, you got to remember, I was there in 1970-71. And, you know, the United States had been in Vietnam actively, really, probably since the first American troops landed in Da Nang in 1965. Of course, we had been in Vietnam, you know, before that with advisors. And so, you know, everything was falling apart. And, you know, just like, the artillery guns that were on our fire bases, you know, they were firing into free fire zones, and you know, I think that a lot of those soldiers that were manning those guns were concerned about where those rounds were going. On one occasion, one soldier got too close to the recoil of the gun, and it took his face off.
わかりました。じゃあ、今度ネイさんお話伺いたいんですが。イラクでも同じようでしょうか。ベトナムの場合はかなりこうなんていうか肉弾戦というかリアルにその戦闘員と戦闘員がジャングルで向き合うような戦争だったんですが、イラクの場合はまあ、遠く離れた機械化されたアメリカ軍が上空からあるいは機動部隊がっていう兵隊と兵隊が向き合わないような形でもって戦争が進んだというふうに聞いていますが。イラクではどのようなことが戦場で起きてたんでしょうか。
Well, I was there at the very beginning of the war, during the invasion, and during that phase, there was some semblance of the Iraqi military. That quickly, the Iraqi military was basically destroyed before we even showed up. So the initial phase of fighting was over very fast. So I was in an artillery unit. Our job was to shoot very long-range artillery, rockets, cluster bombs, basically. Like I said, the initial phase of fighting was over very fast. So my unit was given the job to go and what they called support and stability operations. So we were given the job to go and, in a way, do the exact opposite of what we were expecting and trained to do. Instead of firing rounds, explosives.
How long does it?
Very kilometers, several, up to 10, 15 kilometers or more. So instead of shooting those rockets and explosives, our job was to go and collect ammunition and weapons from large stockpiles that were all over the country. Saddam had spread out the weapons and ammunition all over the place. He wanted civilians to have access to it because he knew that a protracted long guerrilla war was his only chance of survival. So we would go into areas in very large convoys, and we would fill our trucks with with ammo and the ammunition and weapons. We were seeing on the boxes of ammunition, made in the US of A, made in France, made in the United Kingdom, made in Germany, made in Jordan, all of which were allies and are allies of the United States. And most of this weapons and the ammunition was given to Saddam under President Reagan to fight his very long, horrible 8-year war against Iran. A total disaster. So it was a very dangerous job because this ammunition was so old and it was unstable. It would explode when we handled it. It was very dangerous to put in a open truck in the sun and rattling around. We took casualties. This stuff was blowing up all the time. The Iraqis really did appreciate us removing those weapons and ammunition from their neighborhoods, though. That job that we were doing was very worthwhile, and it did improve the lives of those people right there in that immediate area. However, I could see in their faces that they did not trust the Americans. They did not want us to stay. That was obvious from day one, and that was 15 years ago. You know, I've been out now for a good long time, out of the military. My friends that have stayed in have gone back to multiple tours. This is the longest war. Well, the war in Afghanistan, but pretty soon also the war in Iraq is the longest war in U.S. history. So it's changed a lot. There's different phases of it, different conditions. When I was there, everything was just starting though, but you could see right away the U.S. had intentions of staying a very long time. The bases were being constructed, very, very large. The base that I was on when I was there was just an open field with a very large fence around it. And that is all. Now, that same base has permanent housing, paved roads, massive airstrip. We had no running water, no electricity, and we were, living in conditions that, the American Army had in World War I, basically. So, but now there's air-conditioned houses, there's internet cafes, Burger King, there's a mall where you can buy a brand new Mustang or Harley Davidson and have it waiting for you when you come back. It has changed a lot. When I was there, it was what a lot of my friends that were there later called the Wild West period, which is sort of a lawless time where we were, the violence wasn't, the insurgency wasn't there yet.
先ほど前から聞いた話と全然違って、ものすごく戦争自身が無機質っていうか、人殺しをその場でやってるっていう雰囲気ではないんでしょうけども、あなたは実際あなたの敵を見たりしたことはあったんでしょうか？ リアルに相手を殺したり、相手の攻撃する人の顔を見たり、動きを見たことはありますか？
The Iraqi military went home and they deserted. Some fought, and there was some Fedayeen, irregular paramilitary groups that were fighting the coalition as soon as we arrived. But a lot of the worst violence took about a year and a half, 2 years to build up. But essentially there was a whole constellation of different armed groups, some criminal, some political, some religious, that were fighting the Americans. But I mean, they could be Sunni, they could be Shia, they could be aligned with Iran or not. They could be foreign fighters from all over the world. So it's a very confusing situation. Still, the U.S. military never had a very good idea on who was fighting them and why. They had often intelligence just sort of lumped all these groups together, which is not a good strategy. So it's a very, very confusing political situation. The insurgent groups were not united under one political or one ideological idea.
戦争の形態がベトナムとイラクではかなり変わってしまったと思うんですが、その中でもあなたが怖いと感じたことがありますか？この恐怖を感じたっていうのはどういうふうなシチュエーション、自分の身がこんなところにいたら危ないなと思ったのはどういうふうな時感じたんでしょうか？
Yeah, I mean every day you're in a war zone. There's extreme danger.
どういうふうに危ないんですか？
Well, the most dangerous part of our job is moving these ammunition and weapons. That in accidents, traffic accidents. I mean, we would crash our vehicles. One of our trucks rolled over in the canal, and we barely got the driver out. Just sort of the routine things like that. A lot of units, the same roads that we drove down every day, later they were filled with IEDs and people were getting blown up on a daily basis. I was there before that happened. We knew that roadside bombs were a threat, but they were not. As soon as I left and got home, that's when you found a lot of the roadside bombs and snipers and ambushes. So I was there at a period where that wasn't happening as much. So the Iraqis, I think, were watching us to see what would happen. But once the electricity didn't come on, once the water didn't come back, once American soldiers were raping and abusing people very openly, and they saw that our bases were being constructed, that's when things started to get really violent. But when I was there, we were our biggest danger in the sense of, our job was difficult. So if we screwed up one little bit, we would get blown up. We would, have a traffic accident. So that our personal role was a unique one.
イラクではだいたい5000人ぐらいのアメリカの兵が戦場で命をなくしたと思うんですが、どのようなあなたもそういう身の回りでもって人が死ぬというのは実際にご覧になりましたか？
When I think of the dead of Iraq, I think of the dead civilians we saw. I think of my good friends that committed suicide after the war. That's what comes up for me when I think of seeing dead bodies. I can see my friend that hung himself. I can picture that in my head. I can remember the dead civilians that we saw. That's what I think of.
彼はどのような任務につき、どのようなストレスを感じたんでしょうか？
Well, I mean, you know, even the soldiers that go and have to perform combat duties like infantry, and you're out on raids and you're protecting convoys and whatnot, that has a level of danger, personal danger and stress, that is different from being in a support position, certainly. But anyone that goes and participates in that war, or any war that's, I think, unjust, obviously unjust or illegal, criminal, when you think about it later, it's very difficult to live with later, your actions. And it's less, I think it's less about what you experienced or saw. It's more about what you did. So it's hard to reconcile that you're a good person if you can remember the times when you were you did horrible things, and that you don't, so that's hard to live with. And I think that's the kind of stress that builds up and explains why there's so many suicides. The 5,000 or so dead soldiers in Iraq doesn't list the suicides that happen within the war zone or the suicides that happen when you come home. It doesn't list the people that were that overdose on drugs. It doesn't list the soldiers that take unnecessary risks, like driving a motorcycle 150 miles an hour and crashing into a tree. You know, so these are all things that I think are a natural human that happens after you're in a war zone, especially an unjust war. It's hard to live with and justify why you did those things.
ベトナムでも戦争の後、多くの若者がメンタルに傷ついて、そしていろんな、社会問題が起きました。何かあなたの周りでもそういうふうな帰ってきた後、命を絶ったような人たちはいたんでしょうか？
Yes, I did. I had a friend of mine that hung himself in a motel room. I had Nathan May, name of the person. I'm not going to say his name, but he's from Arkansas, and he hung himself. I've had, I've known many friends that eventually died from cancer as a result of being exposed to Agent Orange. My brother-in-law passed away because he died from cancer as a result of Agent Orange. A close medic friend of mine that was in Vietnam with me, he died as a result of Agent Orange. I had another friend of mine that, actually my best friend, he was almost killed in Vietnam, but when he came home, his mother said he was very, very depressed, and he was killed in a head-on car collision, and that was very painful for me.
マイクさんはお父さんが軍人ですよね。あなたも志願して軍人として行ったんですか？それとも徴兵で行ったんですか？ベトナムに。
No, I actually volunteered to go into the military. If people ask me, well, why did you do that? I think the main reason I went is because I was politically naive. And I was raised in a very conservative family. My father was a career military officer. So in so many ways, in my generation, I'm sure Nathan will probably say the same thing. It was, it was our war. We were taught that we needed to go to Vietnam. We needed to defend, democracy and fight communism, and all those layers and layers and layers of lies and false information. So, yeah.
そういうふうに思ったのが言ったら現実が違ったということだったわけでしょうか？
Oh, it was completely different. I mean, I do a lot of, like I say, I do a lot of photojournalism. So I create photography trying to expose a lie. So you've heard the phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, some of the pictures I do, this picture right here, especially with that statement, And that's just this one picture alone.
これはベトナムの女の子ですね。これはどういうシチュエーションでこの写真を撮ったんですか？
Yeah, just this one picture alone is worth 1,000 lies. So instead of saying a picture is worth 1,000 words, this picture is worth 1,000 lies. Because this is a picture of a small Vietnamese child that I took a picture of. And this is something I wrote. And this is the truth of war. You do not bring the enemy to the peace table by just killing military combatants. You ultimately bring the enemy to the peace table by killing innocent civilians because they are military targets. The primary goal of the aggressor nation is to break the will of the people and so they can't defend their homeland. And that strategy is as old as warfare itself.
その話ばかり、これが戦争の本質ですね。じゃあこの話はちょっと後でまた聞きます。姉さん、あなたは、の時はもうすでに徴兵制はなかったわけですけども、そのイラクに行こうと志願して、軍隊に入られたんでしょうか。その時はどういうふうな思いでもって志願をされたんですか。
Like Mike said, I was very politically naive. Of course, I was a young man. I was 18 years old. I just graduated high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't ready for college, and I wasn't going to take that seriously. The recruiters do a good job of figuring out what you're looking for, and then they really focus on that part of it as to why you should go in the military. So for me, it was.
それは学校の先生が勧めたんですか、それとも何か軍隊の方からキャンペーンかなんかがあって誘われたんでしょうか。
A lot of my teachers were veterans. A lot of people in my hometown. The town I grew up in is very, very pro-military. There's a lot of people that join the military in that town for a number of reasons. One of them is there's not a lot of other good jobs. You have to move out of the area to get a good job. So the military is viewed as a very good way to improve yourself, to get college money. They do not shy from that at all. The recruiters focus on those things. So you're very susceptible to that. As a young person, as I was. I joined. I wanted to sort of be a man and do some cool stuff and get money for college. But I joined before 9/11. The reality of the impending war wasn't there yet. I had a vague idea that I could go to war. I understood that pretty well. But my idea of what war would be was that it was going to be a very noble, heroic, necessary thing to protect my country. And what I found in Iraq was not that. It was
ということは、その自ら志願して戦場に行くっていうのは珍しいことではなくて、同世代の人たちでは当たり前にそういうことが行われたということなんでしょうか。
Yeah, the military most every year it gets its recruiting goals. Maybe the Army doesn't once in a while, but I mean the U.S. It's a massive propaganda machine that gets that dictates to the American people the ideas and the values of the military and justifies the military and the wars. So it's a very sophisticated system. So for me, I grew up playing with war toys, playing war games, watching war movies my whole life from when I was a little kid, and it's very common in American culture, yeah. And they do not have the draft anymore. They don't need it. I didn't need to be drafted. I willingly signed up, but I quickly realized that what that war was about, which was corporate profit. I saw how Burger King set up shop right away. I saw how the contractors were being paid exorbitant amounts of money to hand us a towel. or to run an internet cafe on the base, or in many cases take our jobs. They were driving trucks and fixing equipment. I mean, that was all obvious right from the very beginning. So I watched how this war was, you know, the Iraqi people were no threat to the United States. That was obvious from day one.
ということは、戦争に行くということが社会の中にもう一つのセットアップされてしまって、別にそういうことが生活の一部になってしまってたということでしょうか。
Very true.
And Mike comes from a military tradition. I don't. So it's very, very common for folks that join the military to have several generations back, sometimes 3 generations behind them that were all in the military. For me, not so much. I had a grandfather that was too old for World War II and one that was too young.
お二人とも戦場に行って最初に考えたことと随分違うということをもう思い知ったと思うんですが、そしてこの戦争に行ったという体験があなたたちの生活を大きく変えてしまったということでしょうか。どのように変えたんでしょうか。
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. I think you once you are able to expose the lie of the war, because I often have said when in a lot of my writings that lying is the most powerful weapon in war. Okay, and so my belief system was based on the fact that I felt I was going to Vietnam for a just cause. And when I found out it was just the opposite, what happened with me was that my core belief system was completely dismantled. So when I came back to the United States, I felt like I was in this emotional whiteout. I had no sense of direction. You know, because I felt like I was, when I came back to the United States, I didn't identify with my country anymore. As far as I was concerned, my brothers were really the Vietnamese. Because, you know, and if you want to know the truth, when I came back from Vietnam, I probably had to articulate this several years later, was that I realized I fought on the wrong side. That I should have been wearing Ho Chi Minh sandals and carrying an AK-47 because the Vietnamese were fighting for their freedom. We Americans were fighting for wealth.
Wow. Wealthy are richer.
Yes. There it is.
Wow, wealthy are richer. 富めるものがどんどん豊かになる。それが戦争だという。これが戦争の体験の一つの結論だとおっしゃっています。姉さんはどうですか。その、戦争に行く前と帰ってきた後、あなたの生活や考え方は大きく変わったでしょうか。
Yeah, I mean, basically my whole adult life I've been a veteran, right? So I don't have much to compare it to. I was a boy before, and you know, I was still a boy after. But I mean, like Mike, it sort of the myth or the common held assumptions about the U.S. government or your U.S. society, American society, just get obliterated. I came back and I still have no interest in sort of the common American way of life, which is get a house, you know, get married, get a couple cars, go on vacation, acquire things, get a job that's safe and secure. Like, it's hard to be motivated to do that. The trivial, the meaningless, the small talk, the chitter chatter, the just common daily things just lose their meaning. So you search for something else that means something. And for us, I would say it's clear that we fill. A lot of veterans do this. They come back and they fill it with meaning, and often the meaning is speaking out, going against militarism, working for peace, whatever you want to call it. It's work that requires a lot of stress and reliving experiences and a lot of hard work and you sacrifice quite a bit, but it is work that is very meaningful and is work that many of us wouldn't have been engaged in had we not gone to the war.
そういうふうな嘘を言い、人々を巻き込んで結果的に大きな犠牲を出す、そんなバカなことをなぜ政府がやるのか、どうしてアメリカという豊かな国がその豊かな資源を使って戦争など愚かなことをやってんでしょうか。どうしてアメリカは世界の隅々まで行っておせっかいに口を出して戦争するんだと思いますか。どうでしょうか。
Wow. You know, I don't have to tell you that imperialism is a cancer. It's a cancer. And I think America, the United States, has had that cancer for most of its existence. All we have to do is look at American history and what we did to the Native Americans, the Chinese, the Black Americans that lived in the United States. So, we have a long trail of tears, and so that's and when you put money and wealth behind that, let's face it, there are millions and millions and millions of Americans who have a very, very comfortable lifestyle. Now, granted, there are also millions and millions of people that are homeless too, but the motivation to make money is just amazing, because the profit that comes from war has no conscience. It has absolutely no conscience.
そうですね。
Yeah.
しかしその戦争の犠牲になるのは若い人たちですよね。若者の血が流される。若者がこういうイラク戦争などを経験すれば、アメリカの政府に対する見方が、若者の見方が変わっていくんじゃないでしょうか。どうなんですか。そういうものが今度いよいよ次に中間選挙になります。しかし今やっているようなアメリカの軍事増強、そうしたものに対して若者はどう反応しているんでしょうか。
Well, I mean, just like Mike's generation, my generation is split. Some are very involved and aware in politics, and motivated to participate in democracy and or protest. But there are many that are not. Apathy is very, very common, and my generation, I think, are starting to realize that we are not inheriting a better life like our parents did from their parents, and on and on and on. Many people in my generation are struggling for answers on why the U.S. is doing these wars and what they mean, and what to do, how to fix it, how to get out of them. Yeah, I mean, and I wonder what the younger folks that are still in high school now think, because they don't remember a time before 9/11. They don't remember a time before a continual state of warfare and police in the classrooms and police everywhere on the streets, and the military is this, universal system that's all over their country and all over the world. So I don't know if they have a reference to what it was like before this, and that kind of scares me. It's a lot of what's happening seems to be accepted and sort of accepted as normal among the younger generations.
今の話を聞いて非常に違和感を感じるのが、僕たち日本人はこの戦後70数年、日本国憲法というのがあって平和が達成されてきた、アメリカとは違うという考え方があります。それについて実際、日本と軍事同盟を結んで世界で戦争しているアメリカのあなた方は日本の現状をどのように考えますか。
Well, I mean, the U.S. is always looking for people that will be, that will be our allies to support, to be a coalition for American wars, and certainly we had a long list of countries that supported the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I know that when Tony Blair was prime minister and when George Bush was president of the United States, they were going after any country they could get a hold of, that would support what they were doing. So, so I understand that Japan is not actively involved in a war that obviously the United States has been actively in a war for on and on and on. I mean, the United States has bombed 30 countries since the end of World War II. But we also have to remember that even though Japan has not gone into countries and and been involved directly into direct warfare, that Japan's their economy certainly supports American wars, and so you have to look at that. You have to examine that. It's too easy to say that the Japanese are a peaceful country and they're not involved in wars, but as well as I do that that Japanese businessmen are in bed with the United States government.
憲法9条のことがいよいよ日本で改正されるのではないかということが問題になっています。皆さんから見ると憲法9条というのはどんなふうにご覧になりますか？
Yeah, I see the Article 9 as a legal hurdle, a legal barricade against war, and I think that the current administration of Japan wants to remove it to give them a legal justification and a cover to greatly expand the Japanese military, and to also give them a legal protection against if there's a war and it goes badly and the Abe administration is out and another peaceful government comes in, they're protecting themselves from being prosecuted against breaking the Constitution. So it's a very similar situation in the United States. Our Constitution is very clear. It says the U.S. Congress controls the ability to declare war. That has been gone and reinterpreted away for many, many decades now. It still says that in the Constitution. They've not changed that. They've just reinterpreted it. So, and I think it's a similar situation with Japan. Japan is helping the U.S. prosecute wars for many decades now. And so, in my eyes, when I read and interpret myself Article 9, it's been violated for a long time now. So removing it would only, or revising it would only further and help Japan, help the U.S. military prosecute these wars. Just because the war, after World War II, our War Department became the Defense Department. That doesn't mean that they're engaged in defense. After World War II, the Japanese military, the Imperial Army, was suddenly called the Self-Defense Force, right? That doesn't mean that's their primary, it has been for many decades now, but it plays a very important support role for the U.S. military global machine. Japan is a very, very, very important ally for the U.S. military.
それが日米同盟の現実だと思います。そして皆さん沖縄はご覧になりましたか？沖縄に行って現地を見てきた印象などをちょっと語っていただきたいんですが。
I was in Okinawa approximately a little over 2 years ago, probably 2.5 years ago. I went with a delegation of Veterans for Peace members. There was probably about 8 of us there. We were involved in several demonstrations against the bases that are there, and obviously the base that they want to build in Hinoko, and so I think the one thing I was really impressed with was the was the enormous energy that the Okinawan people put forth to demonstrate against those military bases. I saw some very, very brave people. I mean, they were, sitting down on the roads, keeping heavy equipment from passing, seeing they would take and run their cars in the road at an angle and then stop them. Some of them would get out of the car and climb under the car. I mean, the resistance was something that I have not even seen in my country. And so, and because I really believe, this is what I really believe, that if you're going to have peace, if you want peace, it's not going to come from flashing the peace sign.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's not going to come from holding, a sign. It's going to come from direct action, which is something that he believes in, and he knows it works. And I'm very, I've learned a lot about what he said, and I've been involved in direct action. But if we don't confront our governments, if the Japanese don't eventually confront the United States, my government will bury you.
そうですね。どうですか、沖縄は。
I mean, it's shameful that it falls on the Okinawan shoulders. The responsibility lies with Americans. If we would do what they're doing, especially in large groups and numbers, if we would have done that decades ago, or currently, they wouldn't need to. There would be no new base. A lot of the bases wouldn't even be there, probably. The responsibility falls on Americans, and it is shameful what the U.S. is doing all across the globe. I wish I had better answers on why more people aren't outraged and active in the U.S., because it falls on us. I don't want to live in a country that has an empire and it kills people, but I have to stay there because we have to deal with that situation. If we don't, we owe it to the people of Okinawa and Iraq and Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, Somalia, Yemen. The list grows every month. So we owe it to those people to stop this.
先ほどもね言われましたけども、戦争っていうのは決して軍人だけが戦ってるわけじゃなくて、戦争の被害者は沖縄のような基地の周辺の人でもそうですし、ここの少女、こういうベトナムでこう悲劇に遭う人たち、そして広島、東京、長崎、そういうところで大量な虐殺があったと私は思ってますが、マイクさん、戦争っていうのは普通の人たちにとってみて、人はやはりターゲットになってるんでしょうか。
I want to explain something. When you look at this picture of the My Lai massacre, I met the photographer that took this picture. Okay, and when you see the bodies there must be 25 bodies there. I probably walked down that path when I went to the 50th anniversary of the My Lai massacre. I had a friend of mine. His name is Brian Wilson. He wrote a book called Blood on the Tracks. He had a very powerful experience when he was in Vietnam. He went out and they wanted him to go out and write a report on U.S. bombing. The United States was bombing at a low altitude, supposedly military targets, and they were using napalm. So they went into 4 villages and they obliterated these villages under the auspices that they were enemy soldiers. When he went into those 4 villages and saw the damage, he realized they were all civilians, okay? When he looked down at a dead Vietnamese woman that had 2 dead children in this arm, 1 dead child in that arm, and her eyes were wide open because her eyelids had been burned off from the napalm. he made eye contact with that woman. And Brian said something to himself that was so powerful. He said, in that moment, and it only took a second, I got it. Because what Brian realized that his people were the dead Vietnamese on the ground. These are my people. These are my people here. I'm more closely related to these people than my own citizens. I can remember when I went to Vietnam in 1994. Some of the Vietnamese would come up, older Vietnamese would come up, and they'd ask for money, you know. And so there was a Vietnamese woman, old Vietnamese woman, that came up and was asking me for money. So I took out some Vietnamese money and I gave her a lot, and it was probably guilt money. Okay, so I gave her some money, and then I turned and I walked away, and I got about maybe 10, 15 feet from her, and I don't know what happened in my mind, but what I did is I turned around and I went up to her and I kissed her on the cheek. And what I realized when I was kissing that Vietnamese woman on the cheek is that I was kissing my mother. That's how I changed from the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese people are my people.
いろいろな体験があったと思います。やはり戦争というのはどうして起きるんでしょうかね。これを突き詰めていかなきゃいけないと思いますが、最後になかなか終わらない戦争、世界のどこでもいつも戦争が行われています。それに対して我々市民がどう行動したらいいのか、何を考えたらいいのか、この点について最後お一人ずつお話を伺いたいと思います。
I think it's important to educate ourselves about what's going on and not get distracted with conspiracy theories or gossip in the news. We need to really understand how the system works, how it functions, and also what is very important is direct action. We need movements that are organized, that are out there and mobilizing people and educating people, and we need small and large movements. And we also need to connect those movements across the globe, because as we've heard, there's a lot of stuff going on in Okinawa, there's stuff going on in South Korea, all over Europe. It is in the U.S. It's all over the place, and you know, I believe in mass movements of sustained nonviolent action.
I think for me, when I came back from the war and I realized that the war was a total lie, years later, you know, I had one daughter that was born when I was in Vietnam. She later had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, and so my commitment was to bear witness about the lies so that my grandchildren would not wind up in the same situation. I had to educate them, but also, this is very important, and it goes along with what Nathan has said many, many times about direct action. I have been personally arrested, I've been pepper sprayed, I've been tear gassed, I've been handcuffed, I've been thrown down to the street by the cops, I've had live ammunition fired at me, I've had high-frequency noise cannons aimed at me. So if this is what I have to do. If we do not confront our murdering government, they will kill us. We don't have a choice. You can't. You're not gonna just. If we don't get involved in direct action and confront our governments, I feel sorry for people who are armchair demonstrators. You know, they're having intellectual conversations at Starbucks. You know, who cares? You know, if they're not involved in direct action, which of course Nathan talks about so much, he's very articulate when he talks about that, then I feel sorry for the American people if they don't get involved in direct action. And I think it's the same thing is true for the Japanese citizens. You know, there should be 10,000 demonstrators outside of this building.
行動を取る、このことが一つの 我々にとってみればなすべきことだというお話です。今日は自ら戦場に赴いて悲惨な経験をされ、そしてそれを世界に伝えようとして、このベテランズ・フォー・ピースの2人が日本に来てくれました。この訴え、我々はとても他人事として聞くことはできないでしょう。我々がこういう話をまたどっかでしなきゃならないような時代が絶対に来ないように、今日はお二人の話をじっくり聞かせていただきました。皆さんどうお考えになったでしょうか。またお会いしましょう。
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
どうも。
Thank you.